Welcome to Morrow Chronicles. I'm Helga Morrow. This is another first Thursday of the month. We have Morrow Chronicles the first Thursday and the third Thursday of every month. This is another exciting evening. We have a very special guest, but before I introduce our very special guest, I wanted to thank Awareness Journal for their copy and their wonderful write-ups. You can get these free newspapers in most bookstores. And I also wanted to make an announcement about Ted Lohman's wonderful UFO AZ show. Don't forget, tomorrow night we've got some great stuff going on. And Rosemary Jackson's Cosmic Consciousness for the 21st Century is on, and we'd like you to see that. It's at 7 o'clock. And now I'd like you to meet this wonderful friend of mine. This is John Two Birds. John, thank you so much for coming this evening.
My
Just
pleasure.
a pleasure to see you. We've been old friends for many years.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me come down.
We met in Sedona many, many years ago, and we had some wonderful stories, and a lot of people that laughed at these stories, and they said, oh, these never happened, but we're going to show them tonight, aren't we, John?
Well, it depends, I guess.
Nice, yeah. And we had some interesting stories. One of the stories, I'll just go right into it, is about Billy Meyer.
Yes. Well, you have to understand, at the time when we lived in Sedona, they had a restaurant there that was kind of the meeting place for everybody, and it was, I used to laughingly say it's where we went and held court every day. And it was a really interesting place because in this particular restaurant you would have people over here talking about ETs, and somebody over here talking about Reiki, and somebody over here talking about shiatsu, and you had myself talking about Native American stuff and things. And so it was kind of where everybody went down to see everybody else. And one day when I was in there, I was sitting there, and it was also a good place to get your breakfast bought for you, you know. And so I was in the place and was talking to various people and things, and I noticed this gentleman came in the door, and because I've spent time in Europe and so on, by the cut of his clothes and things, I just said to myself, oh, another foreign guest, and really didn't pay much attention to him right then, but he took a seat over against the wall, and he kept watching me. And later on, after everybody left and I was getting ready to go, he came over and introduced himself and asked me if I was John Two Birds, and I said yes, I was. And he said, well, he had some friends that would like to meet me. And I said, yeah, that would be fine, because that was not unusual at the time to have foreign visitors or just people in general who came into town to come and talk to me and things. And he said, well, they're out in one of the canyons, and at the time there was a lot of people that camped out in the canyons and stuff, and so that was nothing unusual either. And then he asked me if I had a car, and I said, yeah, I have a car. And he said, well, could you give me a ride out there? And I said, yeah, sure. And again, it was nothing unusual. And so I gave him a ride out to one of the canyons outside of Sedona. And this one particular canyon, he said, well, they're about 300 meters up the canyon. And I happened to have hiked that particular canyon and knew that there was a fairly large clearing about 300 meters up the canyon. And I thought, yeah, that's a really good place to camp. And so as we was walking through the woods up towards this clearing, and I saw these three people standing there, a man, a very tall man, and two women. And they were dressed in what I would call probably a work suit or a pantsuit kind of thing. Again, nothing unusual. The man was silver-haired and very craggy-faced, but someone you knew who was used to being in command, someone of authority. And the women were young, very nice-looking women, and that, of course, always interests me. And as we got to them, they greeted me, and the first thing that I noticed about them is when they greeted me, their mouth was not moving, but I was hearing them in my head, And so I greeted them back, and that kind of surprised them. And they informed me that I was much more advanced than they thought that I would be. And we began to communicate with each other. They began to tell me some things about themselves and told me that they had been watching me for some period of time, about 25 years, and that it was time for us to meet. And during the process of this, I need to mention here that I'm not a really big fan of extraterrestrials, if you will. And I made that fairly obvious to them, that this was not something that I really wanted to get into, and I was very uncomfortable with, and I would really like to leave. And they said, well, we have some things that we would like to impart to you. And we talked about those things. And then later on, I agreed to meet with them again a second time. And just for some reason, I said, I would really like some kind of evidence, some kind of proof that this meeting took place. And so the gentleman in charge, who called himself Ptah, turned to Mr. Meyer and he said, give him something. And he pulled out this leather wallet, and in this wallet he had a whole bunch of pictures. And he just put them out, and he said, choose some of these. And then he said, take 5. And so I was looking through these pictures, and I'd never heard of this gentleman before. It wasn't until much later after that, after I had the pictures and I went back home and showed the pictures to some people, and they said, oh yes, Billy Meyer has been working with the Pleiadians, the Dalians, and the Durnians, for some period of time now. And so I just picked these pictures at random, and for me they were more like just some kind of evidence for myself to say that see, here I did get these things and stuff. And then later on, people began to explain what the pictures meant and things to me. And it was really interesting what happened after that, because there was several people in the community who got really, really upset with me because they felt like I didn't show enough deference to these individuals. And as I mentioned, I'm not a really big fan of ETs in any form. My experience with them and my knowledge about them and what I was taught about them haven't been really good. So that was pretty much that story. What happened later, though, was there was a big fuss about it, and some of Billy's people out in California got a hold of me, and they had written Billy, and Billy had swore that he's never met me. And I said, well, that's all right, I got these pictures. So I did go out to California and meet with them. They did look at the pictures. They did authenticate them, that those were pictures that Billy does have made, and that he does give out and so on. Things kind of calmed down, though, whenever I told him, look, I'm not interested in trying to make any money off Billy Meyer, or I'm not even interested in Billy Meyer for that matter. And that seemed to kind of calm things down. Apparently at the time there was a great deal of controversy, about people trying to cash in on Mr. Meyer's extraterrestrial experiences and so on. And that wasn't the case with me at all. I have since lost communication with those people, and it's just an interesting story to me.
I also understand they gave you some papers.
Yes. Mr. Meyer also gave me a copy of his original manuscript of the Jemanuel papers. And these were also authenticated by his people out in California. One of the ladies out there, as a matter of fact, was doing the translation out of German into English. And this happens to be a particular style, some of the ways that Billy types, I guess, and things. And when she looked at him, she said, yes, those are definitely copies of the original papers that Billy's been using and stuff. So those were the two things that I had asked for, and the two things that I got. And little did I know that I had something that a lot of people got very upset about me having, because, again, I'm, as they look at, a negative ET person, if you will. And I've actually had people say to me, why didn't they pick me? I would do anything to get to talk to one of them, or whatever. And I wasn't really interested in talking to them at all. and am still not very interested in them. But one of the things that it did do for myself, though, it did allow me to confirm in my own mind that yes, extraterrestrials do in fact exist. They are in fact out there, and I had known this all along, but it was another form of evidence, if you will, on my part, and I had actually never really been able to converse or be close to one in the manner that I was that time and the second time, and consequently I've had 2 other meetings with them since then, and so that's the extent of my Billy Maher story and things, but it created a great deal of controversy at the time, didn't it?
Yeah, it sure did, and I remember when you wasn't it right after you had seen us when I met you?
Yeah.
It was right after
yeah,
that.
well, you, as a matter of fact, you were sponsoring a UFO conference up there at the time.
Yeah, it was at the time, and then you handed me your papers.
Yeah.
You said, "Here, I think you can use these."
Yeah, and I kind of asked Helga, I said, "Are these real?" You know, and I said, "Who's Billy Maher?" And Helga was the first one who really said, "Oh, Billy Maher," you know, and I'm going, "Yeah, who's Billy Maher?" You know, I said, "This one-armed guy came over, and I went through this whole thing with these extraterrestrials, you know, these ETs, and this Artura, and this other lady, and everybody was going, here in Sedona?" And I'm going, "Yeah, right up in the canyon out there, you know." And so it was really kind of interesting, and things kind of, as my gramps would say, there was a big foo-for-rah over it after that.
Yeah. I was in a state of shock for a long time, but I treasured these, and all these years I kept these in very good order.
Good.
Yeah. We were talking this afternoon about some of the sightings that you had with Bigfoot.
Yes, that's a family tradition with my medicine family, my people. We say, as a matter of fact, that the Sasquatch and the Yei are our human beings' original ancestors, and that it was from the Yei and the Sasquatch that the ETs biogenetically re-engineered us to get the Adama, or the person, the humanoids that we've become, and things. And that's one of the reasons why the Sasquatch and the Yei won't have anything to do with human beings now, you know. And we also say that when they begin to reappear and show themselves and begin to communicate with human beings again, which is what they're in fact doing now, certain select people, we say, are being touched by spirit, and the Sasquatch are being guided to them to give them special messages about the closing and the end of this 4th cycle, because there's a beginning, another cycle that's going to be starting in the very near future for us. And so the Sasquatch are beginning to reveal themselves and beginning to reveal information and secrets, if you will, that they've long held for themselves, for us, about ourselves and things, and what we need to be prepared for and what we need to be doing, you know, to help heal this Mother Earth, this planet, and things. Unfortunately, a lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people equate the Sasquatch and the Yei, you know, with the ETs, and I've had a lot of people ask me about that. And from my understanding of it, from them themselves, they watch these ETs, because when the first ones, they remember in their genetic memory, they remember when they first came. And when they went out to see them, went out to greet them, basically, the first thing that happened was the ETs enslaved them, you know, and tried to use them, you know, to do their labor, and they tried to use them for food and everything else.
I understand they're vegetarians, is that correct?
Yes, they are. They've never been known to harm or eat a human being or anything else in their. That doesn't mean that they won't defend themselves and stuff, or that they don't get angry, but basically they're very peaceful people, and they are our ancestors. There's also some misunderstanding. I always talk in terms of Sasquatch and Yei, and there's actually two different kinds. A Yei you find here in the desert, in the river valleys and the swamps and things. And the Sasquatch are primarily the high mountain people and stuff, and they're much larger than the Yei. When I went down to Australia, it was really funny, because I asked Aboriginal people down there, I says, do you have the equivalent to our Sasquatch and Yei? And they said, oh yeah, we do. And they said, they laughed, and they said, the white people call them Yowies. And I said, why do they call them yowies? And they said, well, because every time they see one, they go, yowie. You know, and things. They have another name altogether for them. And they have very personal relationships with those. And sadly, the ones that they have down there are very old now, and very ancient, and not regenerating themselves, not repropagating
How
themselves.
old do you think that they
We know they live to be at least 900 years old.
Wow. Terrific genes.
I would guess, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, though, that we say that they took away from us when we were biogenetically re-engineered. And if you go back and look, for example, in the Bible or some of the old ancient texts, you'll see that a lot of the old people lived for long periods of time.
Methuselah, sure.
Yeah.
A lot of them. But you said to me they left something behind. The little stones.
For certain people, oftentimes they will leave a little sort of a gemstone behind. And they can be blue, but most of the time they're red. And we call them memory stones. And what we say is that they attune that stone to your own psyche, to your own intellect. And when the right time comes, that stone will key a memory or something that they've told you or something that you already know in you. And so a lot of people, you know, that have been given these, and they're very rare. And if anybody gets one, you know, you should treasure it, because you have something very, very special there in your hand. I wear one, but I wear it as part of my medicine pouches and things. And it's a little larger than most of them, but when you showed me that one today, you know, I knew immediately what it was. And you notice I picked it up first thing and held it, and I said, well, this is key for the individual, you know, that it was given to.
Yes, that was from a good friend of mine who's going to be on the next show on the 21st of March. And his name is Kiwani, and he's going to talk about his episodes with the Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And he gets the beads. He's had 5 beads in red, and you told me you had several.
Yeah. Well, we actually have a song. We say we can sing them up. And some of my apprentices, sometimes I use the Sasquatch. I teach my apprentices how to see them. Sasquatch, we say, are what you call, we say they mind speak. You call it telepathy, you know, and that's their defense mechanism. Like, they're so strong with it. Like, you can be walking down through the woods and one can be standing there and you can look at him and he can make you think that he's a tree, you know. He can make you think that he's a rock or a boulder and things. And one of the ways that I teach my apprentices to look for them, I remember one group in particular, I told them, I said, look out there at all those trees out there, you know, and they looked out there and they said, yes, grandfather, so what, you know. And I said, one of them's a Sasquatch, you know, and of course right away it was like, which one? And I said, you know, well, what you need to do, I said, is you need to count the trees. And so they got their pencil and papers out and they counted the trees and everything, you know, and stuff, and made their little maps and stuff. And then, you know, the next day eventually they went out and was able to look, and they were able to find which tree was not there then, you know. And then they knew that that was the one that was the Sasquatch. You know, now once you learn how to look for them and see them, then you can see through that facade. But you have to be adept enough, and you have to be trained well enough, and you have to be sensitive enough to where that when you look out there, you know, you actually look through that and things.
Are they shape changers, or just change your mind to make the image?
They're not shapeshifters in the traditional sense that most people think of shapeshifters. For example, how the Navajo think about their Yenagloshi, or what you would call the werewolf. They're loping people, they're skinwalkers, you know, which are actually really werewolves, you know. And an interesting thing about that, when you look at it, you know, some people, we always think of us turning into animals, and very, very rarely do we really stop and think. We're so egocentric, you know, that animals often can turn into human beings, you know. And one of our own legends, the legend of the White Buffalo Calf Woman, is a legend who brought us our pipes and things, is a legend of an animal turning into a human being, giving us something, teaching us something, and then turning back into an animal and going away, you know. And so a lot of times whenever things happen, you know, these kinds of things, creatures, if you will, that come and stuff, You know, we're looking for all these other explanations, and the explanation's really simple. It's right here, you know, in our own backyard.
Yeah, I often, when I even had pets, I believe I talk to them like they're human, and a lot of us do that, you see.
Yeah, well, I have some dogs that think they're human.
Yeah.
You know?
In fact, our favorite dog we got from you,
My dogs seem to go that way.
but now he thinks he's a cat. That's the difference.
That's why we gave him to
That's
you. But this dog's strange.
Yeah.
Give him to Helga.
You're right. That's the way it is. You were telling me that you went to England. And,
I
came
had,
back.
as the English would say, a smashing successful
Did you?
tour over there last July. And while I was over there, I got to meet with a lot of the Druidic people. I met with one of the high priestess of the Wicca, you know, and of course what I teach, you know, is what I call a new indigenous people of the world, or neo-traditionalism, the new traditions and things. And I talk to people in terms of encouraging them to look at their own tribal histories in their own countries and things and stuff. And just had a fantastic time. I was invited down to a Druidic gathering and spent time with some of their elders and participated in some of their ritual and stuff, you know, and it was just amazing. The one night that we did ritual, of course, they called down the fire and the rain, and this one old elder there happens to have a particular penchant for government buildings and things, and that night 13 government buildings got struck by lightning, you know. And he was really proud of this when he wrote me a letter and sent me a copy of their Druidic magazine, you know, and he says, and look, we got 13 buildings that night, you know. And I wrote him back and said, please don't include me in this.
Not one was Buckingham Palace, right?
Well, we don't bring up names.
No, we don't bring up names. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, you've had quite a few adventures. I remember when we went up to see you in Terra Mater. You have an exclusive tradition that you're bringing forth. One was the Terra Mater that we saw in Quemado, New Mexico. Now you brought it to Nez Perce.
Yes, we were guided by Spirit to move north, and we've moved right into the heart of the Nez Perce Reservation in a small little town named Nez Perce. And what we've done there is we've bought a hotel and restaurant there, and we basically outgrew our facilities there at the little guest ranch we had in Quemado. And we have a number of people, a lot of people now coming from overseas, from South Africa, North Africa, and Europe and England and Australia in particular, coming over. So we took this small little hotel, this little obscure hotel in Nez Perce, and renamed it the Nez Perce International Hotel, you know, and Continental Dining Room. And everybody thought we were really crazy, but because we do have these people coming in, you know, and they are interested in Native American and Western culture, you know, cowboy Western culture, kind of thing. It's working out really well for us. We have a world-class restaurant there now. We have people from all over coming in to visit with us. We have different medicine people that stop by. We have shiatsu masters, Reiki masters that come and spend time with us. And of course, one of my things with them, everybody says, why are you moving to this little nondescript town? You know, there's nothing happening there. And I said, well, we're happening. And we were looking for a quiet place, kind of, you know. And somebody asked me, how are you going to sell quiet? And I said, well, that's really easy. There's a lot of people that want to get away from the ringing telephones and the TV sets and come and be pampered for a while and stuff. But these masters, when they do come, they hold classes there and things for the people, and particularly for my apprentices while they're there and things. So most of my apprentices are moving towards their masters in Reiki, and they're learning about shiatsu, and we have martial arts people that come by. Geshe Yeltsin comes by. You know, he used to be the tutor for the Dalai Lama.
Oh, really?
You know, so it's looking up. We have various Native American elders that come, you know, and things. So it's a happening place. It's an interesting place. You never know who you're going to meet there.
How do people get there? I mean, where? What's the phone number?
The Nez Perce Reservation, as most people know, they think of the Nez Perce, they think of Chief Joseph. And so the Nez Perce Reservation is right up in the middle of Idaho, kind of in northwestern Idaho. It's on the Camas Plains, and it's surrounded by the Bitterroot Mountains, and you've got the Clearwater River on one side and the Snake River on the other side, and we're sitting right out there in the middle of the plains, and basically, if you wanted to get there, take Highway 95 north, U.S. Highway 95 north, or U.S. Highway 95 south, and you go either to Craigmont or Grangeville, and from there you can snake right over to Nez Perce. And it sits right in between the two major Nez Perce towns, Lopway and Kamiai, and things. So it's an interesting place, a fun place,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're doing some interesting things up there. As a matter of fact, we're going to be having a UFO conference up there in the middle of May.
Ah.
And so we're going to be inviting some people to come up and talk up there, and hope that
Yeah.
people will come in, and what people say about the American farmer. You know, when I first got up there, everybody was saying, the American farmer, these farmers, they won't go for that. You know, the American farmer is fairly well educated nowadays. You have to be to run these farms and things, you know, and they've been off to college, and a lot of them have traveled a great deal, you know, and have been around the world a few times, you know, and they're very supportive of what we're doing. So this idea that, you know, farmers are hicks and they don't understand and that kind of stuff, that's just hogwash. We found it to be very different. You know, they've been real supportive to us, and
That's great.
and help us in a lot of things that we're doing up there.
Well, you can give your phone number.
Oh,
Yeah,
by all means.
please give the phone
It's
number.
area code 208-937-2655. And if you'd like to come up and spend some time with us, we'd love to have you come up. We've got a wonderful little hotel up there, great restaurant. We've got whitewater rafting that's close by, back trips. We can take you out on the Nez Perce Reservation, up to the Coeur d'Alene Reservation, over to the Salish Kootenai Reservation. If you're interested in Native Americans, we have some excellent cowboy poets around there. One of the finest saddle makers in the whole world resides in Grangeville. I mean, this guy, people come from all over the world to buy saddles from him and things. So there's just a lot of really interesting things. Good skiing about an hour's drive from us, you know. So there's a lot of things happening up there.
How about drumming or something that people are familiar with here that they know about?
Yeah, we do drumming. As a matter of fact, we teach people how to make drums, and then we teach them how to use drums not only as a form of entertainment, but also how to use their drumming as a medicine tool, a medicine instrument, and not just to journey with, but to actually the laying on hands of how you can hold a drum and drum it. And for example, work on the muscles on a person's body, or move up and down the vertebrae with it. And by the way that you can drum it, man, those vertebrae will just fall right into place and things, you know. So we do a lot of work with drumming, a lot of other things. We run medicine lodges, or more commonly called sweat lodges. We do medicine circles. We teach people about herbs. We're pretty heavy into naturopathic and homeopathic medicines and things. We have people come in and give classes on those. So we're jumping off into a lot of things, and it just seems to keep growing and expanding, you know.
Yeah, it is. It's a world of wisdom right there.
Oh, yeah.
And
And it happens because of all the other good people that continue to come in and share with us.
I know our group here in Tucson is, I'm sure they're very interested in coming up. Be nice if we got a group together just
That'd
to come
be great.
up.
I'd love it.
Wouldn't that be
I'd
wonderful?
love it.
Yeah,
And-
I'm sure we can. Your number again.
The area code is 208. The number is 937-2655. And we'll take a call 24 hours a day.
That's just super. I can't wait. We can't wait till we come up there.
Good.
And you're going to be doing something at 31 East King tomorrow. You're going to be telling some stories from 1 to 4. We're going to share a lot of experiences.
Well, I like to think of it. We kind of call them intimate gatherings.
Intimate gatherings.
You know, where I jokingly say everything you always wanted to know about Indians, you know, and
we're afraid
to ask, you know. And the really amazing thing is that people come there and they all sit around, you know, and I say, anything you'd like to ask me about? And normally they usually have the answers themselves, you know, and things. But I'd like to point out really quickly, too, that if I don't know the answer, I'll be very quick to say, I'm sorry, I don't know that. But I try and reference people. You know, I did teach North American Indian religion and philosophy at the University of Nebraska for 7 years, so I do have some background in it, you know, and I'd like to think that I try and keep up with current affairs and things in that area.
Yeah, and on Saturday from 1 to 4, we're going to have some healing. We're going to have a pipe ceremony
And an old-fashioned Northwestern potluck.
potluck.
Yeah,
Right.
that
Everyone
tradition
brings
actually
that.
came out of that Northwestern area. That name is
Oh, really?
for it. Yeah, the potluck. Yeah, it came out of those Northwestern tribes up there.
And that's also at 31 East.
31
King.
East King, yes. Yeah, and I hope to see as many people that are interested show up. I like people. If I didn't like people, I wouldn't be in
Yeah.
this kind of work.
There'll be a lot of questions, I know.
I hope.
Oh, yeah.
I hope.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And healing. We've been to many of your pipe ceremonies, I remember.
Yes.
The birth of the grandchild, this and that.
Well, for me, I am a pipe carrier, and it's a very, very special way, you know, and it's one of those things that's passed on from generation to generation, you know, and I can't think of living my life any other way. You know, I tried to walk in that other direction, and I tried to walk in the white man's way, if you will, but found myself always being brought back to this medicine way, and always being brought back to my pipe and things, you know. And finally I said, why am I fighting this? You know, kind of like yourself.
Yeah, I'm
Why am
still
I
fighting it.
this? You know, why don't I just go and do what I'm supposed to be doing, you know? And I've never been happier since, you know. It's
Yeah.
a matter of trust.
Yeah.
It's a matter of making a commitment. It's a matter of then trusting in yourself, trusting in what you believe,
Right.
trusting in spirit, you know, and things just seem to fall in place. You know, we were talking about that earlier this evening
Yeah,
at
right,
supper.
right. Yeah, I'm kind of a Viking myself, you know. People look at me and I always say, what's the matter? You never seen a Viking before?
Yeah, with the Jewish accent, right?
Right. That's what my mother would say. There were some things we discussed a while back that I think that we would be interested in, if you could open a few doors or talk to us about it, that exorcism, the kind of exorcism that you do.
Well, that's been another tradition in my family, and it was something I tried to get away from for a while. Again, you see, you have to understand, when I was growing up, it wasn't really popular to be Native American, to be Indian, if you will, you know, and particularly to be someone who had traditional concepts about medicine and things, and who was looked at as a medicine person, and so on. And at times in my life when I was younger, I was actually embarrassed by that, and I tried to move away from it. But recently, it's come back around, and with this cusp period that I believe that we're in now, that I was taught that we're in now, in between now and the earth changes, you know, we're beginning to run into so many different things, and a lot of possessions by what you all call the dark side. We just call it the other side, because we don't necessarily believe that darkness is bad. You know, we say, you come out of the darkness of your mother's womb, we live in the darkness of the universe, you know, so we don't think of it in those terms. And so I've been finding that more and more people, usually as a last resort, you know, somebody say, hey, when I was in Sedona, there's a little fat guy in the Red Rocks down there, you know, that does exorcisms and things. And after they'd gone to everybody else, decided they didn't want to take the Ritalin and stuff, you know, and they'd come down and get me, and then we'd do an exorcism. I'm proud to say that I have a 100% success ratio, because in this particular business, in this particular field, you only mess up once. We believe that,
Yeah.
you know, that if you mess up, then the other side has your spirit, has your soul, and things.
Oh.
You know, so it's not something that I like to do, but it's a gift that Spirit gave to me, and it's a tradition of my people's family and stuff, so I do that. Likewise, we do what we call dehookings, where we've discovered, you know, that a lot of our own people begin to show up with, because they'd been abducted and so on, you know, they begin to show up with actual, in some cases, physical hookings in them and things, you know, left over from these abductions and things, and a lot of astral hookings and things, you know, so we had to learn how to deal with that too. And so I've ended up kind of being the Native American that does the dehookings for our people and things, and then that kind of word kind of got out about that, and so now I work on other people. But there again, it's an area that I try and move away from, or I stay away from, because, you know, that's a dangerous area too, you know. And for me, whether it's the light side or the dark side, you know, my granddad told me one time, he says, look, see what it says in the Bible here. He says, it says, you can be a servant of the Lord, or you can be a slave of the devil. And he looked at me, and if you'll excuse me for saying this on national or public TV, you know, he said, it's kind of like being a house nigger or a field nigger. He said, one works harder than the other one lives better and dresses better than the other one. He said, but whatever way you look at it, a servant is a servant and a slave is a slave. And he said, you know, I remember when he was talking to some young Pentecostals that came to the house one time, and he said, I'll be glad when this Armageddon comes. And he said, and all the good people, he said, they go back to heaven and their God of vanity. And all the bad people, they go back to hell and their God of evil. He said, leave us Indians alone, you know. And so that's kind of my position on it too, you know. I said, I'll be glad when this happens, you know, and this ascension takes place, the rapture takes place, and this other thing takes place. And those of us who I call the new Native Americans, or the new indigenous people of the world, you know, then we can begin again in the beginning, and we can start over, and we can start building and healing this earth and living in balance and harmony, which we say were the original instructions that were given to us by Spirit as to how we were to live, and that the Sasquatch and the Yei still live by, that all the other creatures of this earth live by. We're the only ones that are out of balance, not in harmony. You know, and that's what we say we have to move back towards, is getting ourselves back into balance, back into harmony. And then we have to heal ourselves before we can heal this earth. You know, I talk to a lot of people, and they talk about going out, and we got to go out and do something for the earth. You know, I'm going, yes, you do need to go do something for the earth, but why don't you do something for yourself first? Why don't you put yourself in balance and yourself in harmony? Why don't you heal yourself first? Then we can talk about healing this Mother Earth, because until we heal ourselves, those people who've bent, broken, cracked, you know, this sacred hoop, are going to continue to break and crack, you know, this sacred hoop, because they haven't healed themselves, you know. So we need to heal ourselves. And I guess that's the major thrust of what I do, you know, is looking at people and trying to help them understand what their medicine is, what their gifts are, you know, what their vision is in life, and then help them find it. Or as we say, sit on the mountain or in the valley or beside the sea or in the desert and cry for this vision, and ask Spirit what it is that Spirit wants them to do with themselves. And so that's pretty much really sums up what I'm about, I guess.
Well, you can go deep within yourself,
Yeah.
and that's where the answers are, really, in His eyes.
Exactly. You know, you don't need a pope or a preacher or a priest or a prime minister or a police chief or a president. You don't need all those people to tell you how to live your life. You can talk to Spirit. You can sit on the mountain and talk to Spirit, you know. Some people say, well, what about you, John? I say, look, I'm just a teacher, you know. And some people sometimes try and make me into a holy man. I'm going, I am no holy man by any means. Yes, I carry pipe, and yes, I'm a teacher. But that's what my job is to help other people move, you know, to that direction where they find their own vision. They find out what their own gifts are in life, whether it's being clairvoyant, you know, whether it's being a good doctor or a good bricklayer, you know, whatever it might be. And then how are they going to use those gifts in what we call their medicine, you know? And then as they move into that medicine, what are they going to do to seek and find that vision that's going to guide them, you know, for the rest of their lives in the direction that they need to go?
Seems like we've come full circle.
Well, I wouldn't say full circle, but we're working on it.
Working on it. We're getting there, especially because this is close to the year 2000, and I understand that the Native Americans are having a meeting or a gathering in June. I don't have my papers with me, but I will make an announcement when it comes close enough to that, just to share some of the stories and some of the religious aspects. I shouldn't say religious aspects, but the spiritual aspects of how we can look within ourselves and find our own answers. We don't need a mediator.
That's right. And see, you know, we don't like the word religion. What we say is we have a way. You know, it's more of a worldview, a philosophy, you know, that has its own cosmology that works for us. And things, you know, so we don't like the word religion. When you start talking about religion, then you start implying dogmas and those kind of
Yeah,
things, you know,
yeah.
and stuff. So we just say we have a way. You know, this is my way, this is your way, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, there is supposed to be a big meeting up there. I never get invited to these things, you know, so so I let everybody go, and then they come and tell me
I
about it.
tell you. Well, I have brochures on that. I was going to discuss that with you.
Well, sometimes I don't think I want to go to them. Back when I was younger, I used to go to a lot of meetings, and I sat on a lot of different boards and these kinds of things, you know, and it was great fun for a while, but after a while it gets really old, you know. You don't really accomplish a whole lot out of them, I found. You know, everybody goes and tells everybody else how great they are and stuff, and what's happening. And so I just I backed off from it for about 15 years, and just kind of went to the way that I am right now, where I try and stay pretty low profile, and if you weren't such a good friend, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this right now. You know that.
I know. Do we have a small summation for our friends out there that are listening and that want to learn?
Well, I think the best thing that you can do, and I tell my apprentices, is stay curious and gather as much information as you can. You know, like we study the Emmanuel papers. We have copies of the Emerald Tablets. We read the Koran. We read the Bible, several different versions of the Bible, as a matter of fact. We talk about, we look at Native American custom and tradition, you know, and stories and stuff. So we take a whole bunch of sources, and I just try and encourage people just to get as much information as you can about something so that you can make a good decision about it, you know. But let it be your decision, you know.
Yes, that's...
Let it be your
yeah,
decision.
right.
And if you have information, then you can make a fairly good informed decision, you know, that's going to suit your life. You know, not some gurus, you know, not some political leaders, not some pope or some preachers, you know, but your life. What are you going to do with your life? How are you going to walk your talk in this world, you know? You lead by example.
Exactly. If you walk your talk throughout,
Yeah.
that says a lot right there. Yeah. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
And we know it's going to be continuation again tomorrow at 31 East King from 1 to 4.
1 to 4, yes.
And then on Saturday from 1 to 4 with the pipe ceremony.
Yep.
And the healing, and on about some of the things that we already touched base on.
Yeah,
and then the potluck.
And I do like to, you know, work with people individually and small groups of people and things, you know. I've had a lot of people talk to me about doing videos and writing books and things, you know, and stuff, and I don't do that. I prefer to work with small groups of people and things, and on a one-to-one, a more intimate basis. So come on out.
Right. And if people have any questions, they can call me at 690-0043, area code 520. So that's 520-690-0043.